"What can I do for you, young lady?" said Mr. Stink. His voice was unexpectedly posh. As no one had ever stopped to talk to him before, he stared slightly suspiciously at this plump little girl. Chloe was suddenly a bit frightened. Maybe it wasn't such a good idea to talk to the old tramp after all. She'd been working up to this moment for weeks, months even. This wasn't how it played out in her head. To make matters worse, Chloe had to stop breathing through her nose. The smell was starting to get to her. It was like a living thing creeping its way up her nostrils and burning the back of her throat. Well, sorry to bother you." "Yes," said Mr. Stink, a little impatiently. Chloe was taken aback. Why was he in such a hurry? He always sat on his bench. It wasn't like he suddenly needed to be somewhere else. At that moment, Duchess started barking at her. Chloe felt even more scared. Sensing this, Mr. Stink pulled the Duchess's lead, which was really just a bit of old rope to encourage her to be quiet. "Well," Chloe went on nervously, "my auntie sent me £5 to buy a Christmas present for myself, but I don't really need anything, so I thought I'd give it to you." Mr. Stink smiled. Chloe smiled too. For a moment, it looked as if he was going to accept Chloe's offer. Then he looked down at the pavement. "Thank you," he said. "That's unimaginable kindness. But I can't take it. Sorry." Chloe was confused. "Why ever not?" she asked. "You are but a child," he said. £5? It's much too generous. I just thought, it's really kind of you, but I'm afraid I can't accept. Tell me, how old are you, young lady?" 10? 12, said Chloe loudly. She was a little short for her age, but she liked to think that she was grown up in lots of other ways. "I'm 12, 13 on January the 9th. "Sorry, you're 12, he said, "nearly 13. Go and buy you one of those nice new musical stereo discs. Don't worry about an old vagabond like me." He smiled. There was a real twinkle in his eye when he smiled. "If it's not too rude," said Chloe, "can I ask you a question?" "Yes, of course you can." "Well, I would love to know, why do you live on a bench and not in a house like me?" Mr. Stink shuffled slightly and he looked a bit anxious. "It's a long story, my dear," he said. "Maybe I'll tell you another day." Well, Chloe was disappointed. She wasn't sure that there would be another day. If her mother found out that she was talking to this man, let alone offering him money, she would do her nut. "Well, I'm sorry for bothering you," said Chloe. "Have a lovely day." And as these words came out, she cringed. What a stupid thing to say. How could he ever possibly have such a lovely day? He was a smelly old tramp, and the sky was growing gloomy with black clouds. She took a few paces up the street, feeling embarrassed. "What's that on your back, child?" called out Mr. Stink. "What's what on my back?" asked Chloe, trying to look over her shoulder. She reached round and tore a piece of paper off her back. In thick black letters on this piece of paper was written one word: loser. Chloe felt her stomach twist, and she was so humiliated. She felt terrible. Rosamond must have sellotaped it to her back when she left school. Rosamond was always bullying Chloe, picking on her for eating too many sweets, or for being poorer than the other girls at school, or for being the girl no team ever wanted on their side in hockey matches. As Chloe had left school today, Rosamond had patted her on the back several times, saying, "Merry Christmas," while all the other girls laughed. Now Chloe knew why. Mr. Stink rose creakily from his bench. He gets up. and he took the piece of paper from Chloe's hands. I can't believe I've been going round with that on my back all afternoon, Chloe said. She was embarrassed and the tears were welling up in her eyes. She nearly cried. She looked away, blinking into the sunlight. What is it, child? Asked Mr. Stink kindly. Chloe sniffed. Well, she said, it's true, isn't it? I really am a loser. Mr. Stink bent down to look at her. No, he said authoritatively. You're not a loser. The real loser is the person that put that on your back in the first place. Chloe tried to believe him, but she couldn't quite. For as long as she could remember, she'd felt like a loser. Now Rosamond and all those other girls in her gang were laughing. There's only one place for this, said Mr. Stink. He screwed up the piece of paper and, like a professional cricketer, expertly bowled it into the bin. Chloe clocked this and her imagination instantly started whirring. Had he once been captain of the England cricket team? Mr. Stink brushed his hands together. Good riddance to bad rubbish, he said. Thanks, murmured Chloe. Not at all, said Mr. Stink. You mustn't let bullies get you down. I'll try. Nice to meet you, Mr. She began. Everyone called him Mr. Stink, but she didn't know if he knew that. It felt rude to say it to his face. Stink, he said. They call me Mr. Stink. Hello, Mr. Stink, said Chloe. Nice to meet you. I'm Chloe, she said quite shyly. Hello, Chloe, said Mr. Stink. You know, Mr. Stink, said Chloe, I still might go to the shops. Do you need anything, like a bar of soap or something? Thank you, my dear, he replied. But I've no use for soap. You see, I had a bath only last year, but I would love some sausages. Oh, I do adore a nice meaty sausage.